Hello and welcome to the season finale of the Extreme Cinema Podcast. I'm Alexander Sternberg, and with me, as ever, is Dom Loach. How you been, Dom?
I'm very good, Sterny. How have you been doing?
I've been doing okay. I mean, suck. Season finale.
I know, I can't believe it. Season finale, season two.
We got there. What a year this has been, and we are going to end with a bang, I think.
Oh yeah, this is gonna be a big one, guys. Probably a very long one as well up there.
Yep. Strap in because this is the second Extreme Cinema Podcast special. And similar to our French New Extremity special, which was our mid-season finale, we just had so many of David Lynch's films on our potential to-do list for the podcast. Because I mean, a lot of them could be counted as extreme cinema, like
Yeah.
Eraserhead, Blue Velvet, Fire Walk with Me, Wild at Heart, Lost Highway, all could be done. And you just sort of think, well, we're just going to spend the whole episode talking about David Lynch, so why not do all of them? And then if we're going to do all of those films, why not just do everything that man has ever done?
Yeah, I mean, one of our favorite directors. I mean, your
My
favorite?
favorite,
Yeah,
my
yeah.
absolute favorite.
Used to be my favorite. It's still up there, number two probably, but he's unbelievable, and there's so many films that fit into this stick, like could go on this. We were just like, why the hell not? Do them all, even if all of them aren't in the extreme cinema area. Just do them all.
Yeah, I will not let an opportunity to talk about the Elephant Man go.
No, no. And
It's
Straight Story and all of
oh,
those.
so fucking good. I mean, man has a hit ratio of one of the all-time greats. I did a kind of rough letterbox list a year or so ago of like, oh, here's 100 of my favorite movies. I mean, they're all really rough. Like, I couldn't tell you my 100 favorite movies for
Yeah.
certain. But Lynch was by far the top director. I think the only director who came close to him were Haneke and Carpenter. I think there was about 5 David Lynch films on my list.
Yeah, it's not even my number one director, but I think he might have more in the top 100 than Linklater. I'm not sure.
And certainly one of the most influential directors ever. I mean, Lynchian. Lynchian is one of the most
Yeah.
commonly, probably too commonly used, cinematic words. And people know, I mean, they know David Lynch and synonymous with weird, but like, David Lynch is in the mainstream. I mean, post
Oh,
Twin
yeah,
Peaks,
hugely.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That post Elephant Man.
Yeah, yeah. He's hugely influential, and just everything is. I mean, obviously, Twin Peaks was his big hit that everybody ever knew about. That was one of the biggest TV shows ever released, especially in America.
I wish I was there at the time. I mean, we got to be at the time
Same.
for Twin Peaks: The Return, which we will, I mean, definitely talk about.
Yeah, we
Uh,
were.
he's so cool and he's so kind of idiosyncratic and he's just a charming man to listen to speak. He's so
He is. He's
what's the
such a
word?
troll as well.
He is there's so many good videos of him. Like one of the funniest videos online is in the press for Inland Empire when Mark Kermode's sort of trying to talk about like electricity as a motif in his films, and he's like, Mark Kermode's just like, am I somewhat correct maybe? And Lynch is just like, no.
Which is hilarious because he told Commode before that as well that he was onto something, and then Commode brought it up and that, and he said no, it's just a such a troll of a man. Like,
That's hysterical. Well, speaking of David Lynch's trolling, I think Dom, we got to start off with his most spiritual film.
this is my most spiritual film, you know.
Oh, would you elaborate on that?
No.
Oh, so yeah, Lynch initially studied painting, started making quasi animated films, and got a bunch of grants because people very early on recognized his talents. And he spent about 4 years making what, in terms of, if you were to call this an experimental film, um this is probably the most influential experimental film ever made. It's
Yeah.
definitely the most, I mean, maybe Un Chien Un, but other than that, the most experimental surrealist film ever made, certainly of the modern era, or okay, not the modern era, but certainly post 1950s.
Yeah, yeah.
um and that is, of course, Eraserhead. uh Man, I went to see this in the cinema for my birthday last year because I will use my birthday as an excuse to drag my friends to watch Eraserhead in the cinema. Uh, and I turned to my girlfriend after we finished, and she was like, "I hated it." And I turned to my other friend, and he was like, "I hated that too." But you know what? I fucking love this film.
Yeah, it's incredible. I don't know how you could hate it, but also I obviously know how you could hate it.
I think, I mean, everything about this one's so influential. The It really introduces a lot of things you're going to see from Lynch, like the post-industrial landscape,
Yeah,
both
big time as well.
both in the visuals and also the soundtrack. And we're going to talk about Lynch's soundtracks, I think, for like every other film on this
Yeah.
list, um, which he composed himself, and it's like in its own right. That's super influential in industrial music and heavy metal, which is insane.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, what do you say about Eraserhead, honestly? Like, it's one of the most influential things ever, especially on the art movement in film. Man was creating this on a stupid amount of time ago, and it's like something that could have been released a year ago. It's unbelievable. Like,
It is timeless and unique. I mean, there's a lot of influence in sort of Richard Ayoade's The Double. I remember like noticing that
yeah,
that
yeah.
world was really similar. And it's just horrible. I think one of the main theories about the film, because everything is so ambiguous, is that it's set post-nuclear apocalypse. Um,
Yeah, it's very that is kind of the vibe it gives almost. I mean, everybody who's listening to this has probably seen Eraserhead. It's one of the like you see this if you enjoy weird cinema. That's it. Like it's kind of the starting point, and
it's
it's
amazing how much it hooks you in, because
yeah, yeah,
it's very slow, but the cinematography is so good, and it's really funny. And
yeah.
this was like when I
It's
took my
yeah.
friends to see it, they were like, "I did not get that this is a black comedy," and I'm like, "This is hysterical. How do you not see?" It's because
The
it's
dinner
horrific.
scene is absolutely hilarious. Like the first few scenes are so funny. Like
Even the baby, it's just like there's that when the baby's sick, it's just like the baby's, well, normal, the reptilian mutant baby creature's not normal, but it's just going about normal, and then there's a hard cut, and Jack Nance, who has been in so many David Lynch things since, is like, "Oh, you are sick." And most, if not all, this film is a nightmare, like
oh,
an
absolutely, yes.
actual nightmare. And Lynch really captures dream logic, I think, in a way that even Luis Brunel didn't do quite as well as David Lynch did. Um, Brunel is probably Lynch's biggest influence, at least overtly. I know Lynch has talked about like The Wizard of Oz being his major influence, and Lynch is obviously really influenced by a lot of like classic Americana. Um, but that feeling of being stuck inside a dream that you literally just can't leave, no one has done that like David Lynch has done. And Eraserhead for fucking 1977. Oh boy, it's it's incredible. And like you said, it could have been made yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. It could have been. It's hard to talk about like all of the stuff you're saying because it's what do you say about Eraserhead? Who's to somebody who's not seen it? How would you describe that movie? In like, if you had to go along and be like, "Oh, this is Eraserhead," like,
It's like, I mean, what it is David Lynch's own personal nightmare about becoming a father before he wanted to become a father. That's
oh
literally
yeah,
what it is. And it's told in a nightmare, possibly post apocalypse, possibly it's all a nightmare. Uh, Lynch refuses to even hint at what the film's about. Whereas sort of Mulholland Drive and Lost Highway, Lynch is like, there is this is about this. Not that he will say what it is, but for
yeah.
Eraserhead, it's really left after interpretation. Like, is the man with the levers, is that God? Is that his sex drive? Is that his brain? What the hell's the deal with the literal Eraserhead? later on, the woman in the radiator singing In Heaven, which, again, that song in the soundtrack, it's got its own place in popular culture outside
Yeah, yeah, that's
of
so big
Eraserhead.
out of even people who don't know Razorhead know the In Heaven song. Like,
I feel like I feel like this film kind of baffled me when I first watched it. Like, um, my own personal journey with Lynch. Um, I think I saw The Elephant Man first, which is just brilliant, and you don't need to
yeah,
watch
yeah.
any other Lynch film to know that. Saw Dune, which we'll get to. Um, I saw Mulholland Drive, which I loved, like instantly loved. But the first time I watched Eraserhead, the first time I watched Blue Velvet, it left me a bit like, these are good, but I'm a bit nonplussed. And it was only when I saw Twin Peaks that like the like key into like the David Lynch lock kind of turned. I was like, oh, I get it now. I get what he's going for. And there's this David Lynch tone which so ahead of his time, and no one does it with the subtlety that Lynch does it, where it's ironic, but it's not ironic. You know?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Like, it's presented tongue in cheek, almost parody of itself, but it's actually not, but it's meant to be sincerely watched. Like, David Lynch is a very sincere person, and it's kind of like a hyper reality, like all his films are. Like, this is horrific, but there's this layer of black comedy in it, which is quite funny. But ultimately, even though it's like the comedy kind of brings a smile to your face while watching it, you're still feeling the horror, and that is present in like Blue Velvet and
All
Twin
of
Peaks and
yeah.
Wilder. Just like, I mean, I'll name all the films.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
um, and this is in terms of that tone, it's a little harder to get your head round in this um than it is in Twin Peaks, which people got Twin Peaks.
Yeah,
But
people got Twin Peaks, yeah.
this was, an infamous midnight movie. uh People went to it. I think a lot of people went stoned to it. It's mental, and it's really effective. Like, one of my friends, when I went to go planning the cinema trip for it, was like, I've seen it, I'm not watching this film again, it's too disturbing. Like, genuinely, like, it's it's a very affecting movie. It's completely surreal, and it manages to be engaging despite sort of being very slow. Like, it's sort of 10 minutes of walking in rubble is the second
Yeah,
scene.
especially this yeah, yeah. Would you call Eraserhead his least accessible movie, or would you give that to Inland?
Oh, by a mile, Inland Empire.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I think everyone should watch Eraserhead. I think Inland Empire is the only one of his films I would be like, never under any circumstances watch this unless you love David Lynch. Like, everyone needs to watch Eraserhead. Like, you just have to. If you're into film and you've not seen Eraserhead, what on earth are you doing with yourself? Um, Whereas Inland Empire, you need to be a hardcore Lynch fan to like that.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you think, without, because we'll do a special, so we're not gonna do heavy spoilers,
Yeah, yeah.
but what do you think this is about? Because that's obviously the nightmare of, becoming a father before his time, but also the thing with the man with the levers and the wall putting up and coming down and everything. I've seen online the theory that he is like repressing like his entire past because it's so traumatic.
Yeah,
um
I've heard so many different interpretations and stuff out there. So it's honestly it's hard to get your own ideas into Eraserhead anymore. Like it is
yeah.
with some of Lynch's stuff. Obviously the heavy, like you said, fears of having a child and everything are in there and quite obvious if you think about it just
I
for
don't
a
even
bit.
think you need to think about it. Like, that's just,
No, no.
it's it's clearly, and then if you know it's a nightmare, or that most of the film is a nightmare,
Yeah, yeah.
then you will understand the film on its surface level, like, no problem. And that's why I think you can still be engaged through it literally on that surface level. And the technical like prowess, I mean, this was an incredible feat. Like I said, took 4 years to make, and this is one of the very few cases where you can make a proper auteurist argument,
Oh,
because Lynch
absolutely, yeah.
really micromanaged this film, not out of obsession, not that he isn't an obsessive director, but out of, it was a no budget movie that took 4 years to make. Like, there's a bit in one of the audio commentaries on it where I think it's when Jack Nance's character's talking to the neighbor and he walks into his flat, and David Lynch is like, there is a 2 year gap in between him being outside in the hallway talking to the neighbor and him being in his flat. So, like, the sets and everything, Lynch, like, basically design knows himself. Like, Lynch talked about there's the gunk in the drawer, and like Lynch
Yeah,
was making that himself from vanilla pudding and whatnot. So this is one of few films that you could really make an argument being like, this is made by one person. It's not, because no film is ever like that,
fully
unless of
made.
course
Yeah.
it's a Neil Breen film. But
The mad lad.
the only auteur. But it's like, it's as close as you could possibly come.
Yeah, it's genuinely genius, and we have a lot of Lynch to talk about. We've already gone on for so long on Eraserhead, but it warrants it because it's his first one, and it's just an unbelievable movie. For is this guy's first movie. Like, he makes everybody look horrific. Like, it's
I I
unbelievable.
I didn't even think about it like that. Like, this is, of course, up there with Citizen Kane,
Yeah, yeah.
Reservoir Dogs. I I don't even know first films better than this. I think I've just listed
The
the
ones,
only
yeah,
one is better
yeah.
than Citizen Kane.
Yeah, that would be about it. Like, and this is obviously such a influential movie in the opposite sense of how it's so out there and so one guy's mad genius on full display.
In terms of post-apocalypse, the depiction of it, it's really unique.
Yeah, yeah. From an aesthetic point of view, it's very obviously post-apocalyptic. Like, that would be where the interpretations all come from because of the insane, like, walking through rubble scenes and everything that you see, and then just the weird dinner scenes and everything like that just kind of scream almost insane post-apocalyptic kind of stuff that's going on. So it's the most, like, it's not Fallout. It's the
But you
it's
you could you could see it though as just like a really weird depiction of like rundown American estate as well. Like, you can kind of see it on that level. Like, Lynch, a lot of the like classic American, house in the suburb, family unit. That's always in Lynch's sort of line of sight in his films, in both a nostalgic
yeah,
way
yeah.
and a cynical way. So you see that in Eraserhead as well. So I don't think the first time I watched this, I went post-apocalypse. I just went, this is a very weird way, but this is a very weird surrealist look at America, which
Yeah, definitely.
everything he's ever done is virtually.
That's the thing. I saw this film so long ago, so I can't even really remember my initial interpretations or anything, but I don't know if I even straight away was like, yeah, post apocalyptic. It might have just been, this is just a weird bit of America with a weird family doing some weird shit. Like,
And as you know, this is the Extreme Cinema podcast. Without spoiling it, the ending is horrific.
the ending is horrible, yeah.
Like,
It gets
that's not
brutal.
funny. Maybe it's
Yeah,
meant to be funny. In fact, it probably is meant to be funny, you know what? But wow,
probably.
it's disturbing.
It's very disturbing. And we should probably move on from Eraserhead
I
because
think we have to,
we
because
have a
oh
while
my.
to go.
Uh, so Eraserhead becomes the biggest cult film and the biggest surrealist film, and one of in art cinema circles, I think almost indisputably the most influential film of the 1970s,
Yeah,
which is saying something.
just a little, yeah.
So then one of his fans, Mel Brooks, helps get his next project off the ground, which is Lynch's most mainstream film. Won many Oscars. Lynch was nominated for directing himself.
Yeah.
It's an absolute goddamn fucking masterpiece of a film, in my eyes, and it is The Elephant Man. Um,
Yep.
it's it's a masterpiece, and it's like one of the most sincere and humanist films ever.
Yeah, I'd say so. And it's an odd line because he goes from Eraserhead to this, and it's so different and so humanist, and so it's obviously about John Merrick, the real guy. So it's a biopic as well, and it's so different. And like,
There are a lot of similarities though, I feel, because everyone kind of goes like, and anyone could have directed this, not
oh
just David
no,
Lynch.
no,
It's bollocks. Like you've got he's instead of this like American like falling industrial scape, you have like Britain, like firm industrialized Victorian Britain,
yeah,
and like the alienation of man and machine is like such a theme in this in the background as well. Like in like one of the first scenes, the surgeon by Trees by Anthony Hopkins is fixing up someone who's been horrifically mangled in a machine, and he's like, these machines are terrible, you can't reason with them, like.
yeah,
And people are treating John Merrick like an animal. They call him the Elephant Man, and he's treating him like a human. But then the film kind of goes back round on itself and being like, is he rescuing this man who's got these disability, which has been exploited by a freak show. It turns back and looks on Trees himself, and why is he helping him? Is he
yeah, yeah.
also exploiting him? How could you not? um and the directing, like the angles, the lighting, the black and white, it could only have come from Lynch. But you have these really like incredible powerhouse, not weird, very realistic performances, perhaps career best from Anthony Hopkins, which is saying something.
Which, yeah, just a
um,
little bit.
I would say, without a doubt, career best John Hurt, which is
Oh,
very much. I mean, these are two of the
yes.
greatest actors of all time.
Yeah, John Hurt's performance is this is one of the most unbelievable performances ever. It is absolute powerhouse. Like, and we're talking about John Hurt, saying John Hurt's best. I mean, think of the incredible things he's done, and this is something else.
It's not just the physicality of the performance, and he's acting through the makeup. Like he's acting through this heavy layer of makeup, but you pick up like every ounce of emotion that he has. And the way his character starts is kind of broken and like completely guarded, and how he's sort of slowly breaking down these guards to reveal, to show a real personality, the humanity inside him, because he has been alienated from society, being treated
Yeah,
like the Elephant Man. It's beautiful. It's properly beautiful. It's like, it's depressing, but it's so at times, but it's so uplifting as a film as well. It's one of it really is, in terms of a film that can provoke like really powerful emotions. It's like at the top, like beyond any sort of technical aspect of it. It's a very powerful film.
yeah, very powerful. And my story with this was the first Lynch I ever saw, and I saw it in my
Same.
GCSE drama my class, and it was put on by our teacher to show us the ridiculous performances in it, obviously. And it's such a weird thing to think that a Lynch film could be shown in GCSE drama, but it is
Uh,
so
I,
powerful and so good.
I think I was like 10 when I first saw this. I think, like, I was saying to people, like, I think the first time I started taking film a bit more seriously is I got like a free 6-month Love Film subscription back when they sent DVDs from the post. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just used that to, like, here are all these classics I've heard about. Let me go get them through the post. So I watched it with then. I don't even remember if I knew who David Lynch was then. I may well have done just, and his films are meant to be weird.
Yeah.
Um, but
I
I mean,
definitely had no idea who Lynch was when I first saw this.
anyone can watch this. Anyone
Oh
should. I
yeah.
mean, everyone probably has. It got re-released in cinemas last year, which is I went to see it in the cinema, and it's just, it knocks you away on the big screen. It's a masterpiece of directing, and it's got, because people always say it's normal. It's got all the weird David Lynch dream
Oh, it's
sequences
got
in it.
some weird bits in there still. The whole elephant and the mother bit as well is very out there.
It's like, it's mythology of how the Elephant Man became the Elephant Man, but it's obviously not serious. He's obviously
Yeah,
not
yeah.
actually wanting to imply his mother got stomped by an elephant and that's why he looks like this, but it's creating that mythos around him, as like, this is what people think. Like, I think one of the genius strokes in this film is like the first half hour before you see John Merrick. it's shot like a Universal monster film, especially the first scene. Um, it's got these long shadows, black and white. It's clearly got a
Uh-huh.
lot of influence from like Todd Browning, and it really turns that on its head by the end. And it's a shame that when this film came out, the initial marketing was like, "Oop, want to see the Elephant Man? You have to
Yeah, I
go
know.
watch the film."
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, it's not Lynch's fault. I'm sure he had no control over that, but like the hypocrisy is insane.
It defeats the entire point of the movie to advertise it that way.
Um, it's a shame almost that David Lynch for his features never worked in black and white again. I don't think. I mean, this is
Yeah, I know.
beautiful.
Because he does his first two in black and white as well, and then
I mean, I consider this a masterpiece, and there is a subsect of David Lynch's fans who not don't like this, because I don't think anyone in their right minds doesn't
no,
like
no.
the Elephant Man. But there's a subsect that don't really take this very seriously, and like,
I can see that. Like, I could see why it's obviously such a dumb idea, but I could see them being like, "This is less Lynch than they
yeah,
love their Lynch." Like,
basically, like, oh, you ain't seen real Lynch. This is as real
yeah,
Lynch as it comes, folks, and like. If you think otherwise, you're being pretentious, stupid, and you can't understand subtlety.
exactly. Just wait till we get to June, then.
Well, I think we're about to move on, unless you have anything more to say on the Elephant Man. How was the portrayal of John Merrick in the film? How does it relate to previous portrayals of him? Because you would know about this.
Yeah, but very obviously, it's a lot more human than a lot more portrayals of John Merrick has ever been. It's a fantastic way because, as you said, the marketing for this film is how John Merrick was usually marketed and just seen in pop culture before this. Um, Obviously, he was a real guy who did freak shows, got pulled into that stuff, and then um ended up being a speaker at some stuff. And it was it's probably one of the better like depictions of freak show culture in general. Like, there's a lot of films about it, and there's a lot of media out there, and it's the least sensationalized, which is saying something. Like, because Lynch's stuff is kind of sensationalized a little bit in the way that, like you said, it's not supposed to be taken seriously, but the whole his mother was stomped by an elephant crate and everything. But the way it then, like you said, after the first 20 minutes, goes away from creature of the month kind of thing and makes it a very human performance, it helps a lot, and it is probably one of the best depictions of it out there.
I think the I would say that when Bites comes back and starts like the whole conflict in the third act when Merrick goes away again.
Yeah, yeah.
That didn't happen in real life, and I
No,
do
it
think
didn't.
it's
No.
yeah, I do think it's really upsetting, and I do think it might be a little unnecessarily upsetting considering that didn't actually happen, and if they didn't introduce that conflict, the film would be no worse for it.
Yeah, it
Um,
was definitely creating some big conflict there just to add something else to the movie. It almost feels like studio interference. It's like,
it almost does, even though
yeah,
I would have no idea
probably
if it
wasn't.
wasn't.
No.
But then you get the scene in the toilets of the station, which is, I mean, one of the best acting moments ever. By the way, before we move on to Dune, I just want to say I'm not being hyperbolic in this episode. You're gonna hear a lot of from both of us best of all time. It's David
Yes, yes.
fucking Lynch. He's done a
It's
lot of that,
Lynch. He's done so many best of all time. So, and we've not even got to my favorite movie. So we've got a while yet.
which is obviously Dune.
Oh, that just wait till June.
Well, after The Elephant Man, David Lynch is firmly like the hottest director. Again, I'm not being hyperbolic here. I mean, The Elephant Man, tons of Oscars, award claim,
Yeah.
incredible reviews. It's loved by the public. I mean, so much. It's a real hit of a movie. I mean, every single person listening will have seen it. And if you haven't seen it and you're kind of our age and you're millennial or Gen Z, I guarantee your parents have seen it and probably saw it in the cinema. Like,
Absolutely. Yeah.
it was massive. So, he's already being tapped to do Return of the Jedi, which thank God he didn't do.
Oh my
Um,
god, yes.
but he does a really big film next, which he's kind of sounds perfect to do, and he has the worst time ever on it, and he's interfered by the studio, and he has his name taken off the film, so it's directed by Alan Smithy when it comes out. The Blu-ray
Yeah, yeah.
does say David Lynch. I think there's differences between what release you have if it says Alan Smithy or David Lynch. Alan Smithy, for those who don't know, is the director had his name taken off, so that's
That's what they
what you
put,
put on
yeah.
it instead.
It's like
Um,
John Smith.
nom de guerre, I believe, is the term, and that is Dune. He takes over Alejandro Jodorowsky. So we're taking it back to the first of this new second half of the series. Was going to direct Dune. He was going to make it 10 hours and absolutely insane. And it was the most expensive pre-production fucking ever at the time, like millions on pre-production. And then the studio got cold feet about letting this madman um sink their studio with this. So they give it to David Lynch, but it's a big, big, big sci-fi blockbuster. It's
Yeah.
it was a different time. Not every single big film was a tentpole release, as we call it now, whereas now it really is. But this was a tentpole release. It was huge budget, and the film is a complete mess.
Absolute mess.
It's not as bad as people say because it has a reputation. I mean, it genuinely has a reputation of being like dreadful. Like you look at like the reviews, I think Sistel and Ebert's review of it at the
Yeah,
time,
yeah.
it really was sort of hailed as like an all-time turkey.
Yeah, I don't like this film. It's not it's not the worst ever. It's still got some Lynch charm in there. And it's Kyle MacLachlan's first showing with Lynch as well, so it's decent. It's just such a mess, isn't it? Like it's such a mess.
Yeah, it's a mess. And there's no other way of doing it. I mean, the cast is great. I mean, Patrick Stewart's really good in
Yeah,
it
yeah.
as well. Kyle MacLachlan is a good Paul Atreides. I haven't actually read the book, but like I like him in this film. I think the production design is outstanding. And the production design may well, as amazing as Villeneuve's was, which Villeneuve's is an actual science fiction
Masterpiece.
classic in my
Yeah.
opinion. The production design in Lynch's is so out there. It's very like prog rock album cover that it might be better because it's like no one else has ever done a science fiction film that looked quite like this, probably because this film was a gigantic failure.
No, that is the greatest thing about this film by far is the production design. McLaughlin is a good Paul Atreides. It's my favorite book of all time. I've read it many times. So you could probably tell why I'm not a big fan of this film as well.
Well, the storytelling is garbage, and
Yeah,
this really
absolute
strikes me.
garbage.
This is probably a result of the Lynch studio clash because like it's so poorly paced. I mean, it's like 2 hours and a bit, and it takes like an hour 50 to get nowhere, and then ends just so quickly.
It's kind of what were they thinking, honestly. Like it's you can tell that Lynch just was battling the entire way. Like, and thank God when we get to it much later down the line that he never let the studios interfere with Twin Peaks like they wanted to.
Well, they did in a way, and I
I
think they
mean,
made it
well,
better.
season 3 isn't, but
We'll season 3. Well, we'll get to
yeah,
Twin Peaks later, obviously, but I mean, the thing is, I would recommend people watch this because of the production design, because of the score by Toto. That's
yeah.
kind of it, but that's good enough to make this a recommendation. I'd say
Yeah.
it's like a really mediocre film. It's a mess. I wouldn't call it bad. I think you would.
Yeah, I'd probably call it bad. I still do think people should watch it, especially if you just want the full Lynch experience to see everything. You gotta watch it once. Like,
The like Harkonnens are so batshit in this, and Sting in his like
Sting is so
speedos
good.
with
I
the
actually
like
love Sting in this.
is so mental. Like that's like such a like weird David Lynch thing. Um, I had the party recently, and I put this on in the background just as like you know something on the background because I was like, what's a good film to watch on mute? And I put this, and then I put Daisies on after it, and
That makes sense.
people occasionally would turn to the television and go, "What the fuck?"
Why is Sting there? Like,
The thing is, it convinced me. It tricked me into thinking it was a good film because I've seen this film on mute like twice now. I've just realized this. Like once I put it on at my party, and the other time I was in a bar in Berlin, and they had this project playing, and they were playing. It was muted, and they were just playing "Dope Smoker" by Sleep in the background. So when you watch it on mute,
that
it tricks
is
you into thinking it's like a masterpiece.
that might be the best way to watch that movie I've ever heard.
uh, yeah, "Dope Smoker" by Sleep. Everyone go listen to it.
Yep.
But it's yeah, on mute it's great, but like yeah, the script sucks. The storytelling is dreadful. It's a mess directing wise. It's got some incredible things like the opening where the princess is fading in and out to give exposition. I love that as an
Yeah,
opening,
it's pretty clever. It's pretty decent.
but it's a mess. It bombed like Waterworld level bombed.
Yeah, bad loss of money there that
Very
ruined
understandably.
Lynch's reputation with the general public a little.
Thank God, because this is the most necessary thing to happen. Because
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Lynch had such a terrible time. He's like, I'm never doing a
Big
big studio
studio.
film
Yeah.
again. I'm going back to doing my own shit. And then goes away and comes back with one of the greatest movies of all time.
Yep.
Again, not hyperbole.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
Reunites with Carl McLaughlin in one of his best roles. Not his best, that would be Twin Peaks.
That's Twin Peaks,
Um,
yep.
and yeah, wow, Blue Velvet. Where do you begin with this? Because, like
Everybody
Eraserhead, this is one
ever,
of the most influential American films of the latter half of the
yeah,
20th century.
every human that's ever talked about movies in some kind of internet forum has talked about Blue Velvet. It is. Everybody talks about the performances, and rightly so, because it's unbelievable. Everybody talks about the themes and the
It's hair
kind of
raising.
subtle way that the themes are done, but also not really so. All of like the seedy underbelly of the white picket fences. It's unbelievable.
It's the
Like,
psychosexual, like sadomasochistic, like darkness in it that's just so hair raising because like
yeah,
it's not just like, I mean, the seedy underbelly is so like obviously explored in the opening, or like what it's about, but like you've
yeah,
got
yeah,
this
yeah.
like noir film that David Lynch just really turns really ugly, especially in the second half of this. And I was lucky enough to catch this in the IMAX recently, the BFI IMAX, because they put it on as part of the Sight and Sound Top 100 Films season at the BFI in London. And watching it on the big, not just the big screen, but the biggest screen, I was like, my hairs are on end. It's so powerful.
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows the scene. Like
There's multiple scenes. There's obviously, I mean, lots of people I know have basically refused to watch it because the portrayal of sexual assault in this is
yeah, yeah,
really disturbing. It's really disturbing and sadomasochistic. And Dennis Hopper, this is such a prime example of that Lynch tone of the like, it's not, there's a level of irony, there's a level of dark humor, but you're meant to take it seriously, and you do. Like, he is one
yeah.
of the scariest villains,
He
again,
is
I'm gonna say it, of all time.
horrifying, absolutely horrifying in that role. Like, could you imagine anything else, anybody else doing that? No, just because it's that
Well, you know the story of
horrific.
how he got the role as well,
I don't think I do. No.
that he had seen the script and he messaged Lynch, or wrote to him as you did in those days,
Yeah.
and said, I have to play Frank Booth because I am Frank Booth. And Lynch was like, I was torn because on the one hand, I wanted someone like that to play the role, but on the other hand, I didn't want to ever meet anyone like Frank Booth.
Exactly. Like somebody's messaging me saying, "Yeah, I'm like Frank Booth. I'm never speaking to that human again."
Yeah, Hopper's terrifying. It's also the first role of Laura Dern, I believe? Or is it one of the first roles?
It's the first, yeah.
Or is Smooth Talk the first?
Oh, maybe then.
Maybe it's
Yeah,
one of her earliest roles. Um, she nails it, and you've got the dichotomy because Lynch loves his dualities, which you're going to see time and time again in this film. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
it's looked at in Elephant Man a bit. There's a duality of man and animal and whatnot, but she is this sort of the all American girl next door is contrasted with um Isabella Rossellini's character, who is like this. She's kind of portrayed as a seductress on the surface, and then as the layers are peeled off very quickly, very very quickly, it's like the levels of trauma this woman has suffered. Like she's the black haired one, and Laura Dern is the pure blonde one, and that comes across on Dave and like every other Lynch thing we're going to talk about.
yeah,
This
yeah.
is
So,
them in some way, basically. Um, it's it's amazing that this neo noir film set in the American suburbs has so many layers to it. In terms of its portrayal of sexuality, in terms of its deconstruction of Americana, um, and then it's brutal. It's got that aspect to it that Lynch is taking the gloves off,
yeah,
and
very
then
much so.
on the surface, it's a great mystery film.
It is. That is. It is just a great mystery film as well, which, when you talk about Blue Velvet, is overshadowed a lot of the time with the hyper sexualized violence and everything that everybody knows this film for, and they kind of forget that aspect of it a lot, which I can understand why, because
Yeah,
holy shit, is is some of this brutal.
I mean, the imagery, it's not just the ear in the field is really palpable, but
Yeah, yeah.
I think the in dream sequence, which is my favorite scene in the film, um, I don't think I'd ever seen anything like that when I had watched this film for the first time. Like, Jesus Christ, it's again that tone of not serious, but you're going to feel it seriously. Um,
Yeah, definitely. Is
it's surrealism at its best.
is this the film where Lynch falls in love with the saxophone as well? Is this the first one?
It's the one where he falls in love with his soundtracks, that's for certain.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's his first collab with Angelo Badalamenti. The theme from Blue Velvet is a classic,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and not even. I mean, I think if you're going to talk about Badalamenti and Lynch, we'll get to it in a
We'll get there.
second. But
Yeah,
like, of all the iconic stuff he's done, it's up there. Um, it's up there. It's not quite Twin Peaks, but the score is phenomenally good. The opening, it reminds me of a very old-fashioned film the way it opens.
Oh,
And Lynch
absolutely,
always
yeah.
has that like 50s aesthetic going on. I mean, Twin Peaks, when I watched that, I first for 3 episodes I thought it was set in the 50s, and then there was a MacBook later on. And I was like, what the fuck?
What is happening here?
Like
Like,
Lynch's portrayal of America is always, it's always a deconstruction of that aesthetic, the white picket fence, the
yeah,
muscle
always.
cars,
Yeah.
the family unit, the 2.5 children and all that.
Lynch always wants you to know that everything is actually fucked up and nothing is normal. That's his entire shtick. Like,
But it's not just that is the thing, because obviously that is what like most Lynch Blue
yeah,
Velvet
yeah.
and Post Blue Velvet and Eraserhead is about. But there is like a genuinely like nostalgic element to it.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like Lynch is this is what I mean by the tone. He's cynical, but he's not like that cynical. There
He's
is a
not
level
overly
of
cynical. No.
this is nice. Like the Robin at the end of Blue Velvet, there's a large debate about how ironic this is meant to be. And you know what? I don't think it's like ironic at all.
Really?
I really don't. I think Lynch kind of is like, hey, they can live like this now, and even though there's the underbelly, they're gonna get on with their lives fine, and isn't that all right?
Yeah, I don't think he's a full-on cynic like some directors out there. I think he has a lot of humanity in his films is a thing. Like you've seen it first off in Elephant Man a lot, and then you see it throughout a lot of his stuff, like especially going into Twin Peaks and everything.
It's incredible going from. I mean, Blue Velvet. is a fairly niche piece of art.
Yeah.
It it managed, you know, it's a relatively big film, but this is a film that is basically designed to turn 90% of people away.
More or less, yeah.
And I just to say to everyone listening, I really can't recommend it more. It's like one of my top 5 films of all
Oh,
time.
no, no.
And maybe we're going too much on how unpleasant it is, even though that is like the primary feeling of it. But it's so engaging. It will just immerse you into this world. And Kyle MacLachlan's character, again, he's like the all-American boy, and it's such a good like deconstruction, you know, turn it on its head of that. You know, when he starts interacting with Isabella Rossellini's character, all this sort of repressed sexuality is
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Um and these themes of sexuality I don't think are exploitative or trying to be edgy for the sake of it. I think it's what makes this film really unique, to be honest.
Oh, yeah, same. Yeah, it's definitely not exploitative in the way some of the stuff we watch for this is. It's very done with a purpose and done to show Lynch's vision for what was happening there.
It's brilliant. Like he goes from this, and you know now Lynch is like indie art house cred at
Yeah, yeah.
absolute maximum again. And then he goes and makes a television pilot that gets turned into a show. Back then, film directors did not work in television.
Oh God,
Television,
no, no.
especially American television, was regarded as like low art. Lynch doesn't really see the difference between high and low art, nor does he see the difference between film and television as a
Nor does he
storytelling
care, I
medium.
think. Like,
No, and he makes, you know, and this is when the period when this experimental surrealist film director becomes like a mainstream American household
yeah,
name. You know, he's on all the talk shows and everything because Twin Peaks as a show, no one expected it, including ABC. No one expected it to blow up like it did. This was one of the first shows, but the first proper primetime mainstream show in America to do the continuous plot. And it
yeah.
led to a phenomena. You know, there's Who Shot JR, but then there's Who Killed Laura Palmer.
It's unbelievable, and I mean, how many times are we going to say best ever in this fucking episode?
Best
But
television show ever made.
best television show ever made. It is untouchable. Like, I have some that I personally think are my favorite over it, but my God, this is untouchable as a TV show.
My favorite
Just think about how much there is to say about, about this show.
my favorite drama is Twin Peaks. My favorite comedy is The Simpsons, and I don't think those two are
Yeah.
going to change ever. The cast of characters are so, you know, you've got Jack Nance back forever, you've got Carl MacLachlan back, and Lynch initially thought MacLachlan was too young to play Cooper, but man, he nails it.
Oh my
You've got,
God, does he nail it?
you know, and every single character in this film, in this show, is so like quirky and hyper real, and mainstream America had never seen anything like this. He's really over the top three characters, and yet Lynch and Mark Frost, we must credit his co-writer Mark Frost as well, they
Yeah,
make him
yeah.
so deep. It's incredible.
Every single character is somebody's favorite out there. Like, it's unbelievable. It's the character they put in there, the things they talk about with each character, the way that there's this unbelievable mystery and crime drama running through it that's done in such a straight-laced way sometimes and absolutely blows the lid off everything at other times. It's unbelievable.
It What I think this is, like I said, this was the key that unlocked that tone of it's ironic but it's not.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, this show was stylistically a parody of a soap opera. I mean, like a literal parody. But in that first episode, when the whole town is learning about the death of Laura Palmer, there's nothing funny about it.
Oh
So
no, that's the
it's
thing. Yeah.
telling you on the surface it's a parody, but it's not.
It's a TV show with some of the most horrific moments ever and a proper horror, cosmic, terrifying horror with parody in
With
there, good humor, especially from Coop a
very,
lot of
very
the
funny
time.
show.
Very,
Very
very
funny.
funny show. I mean, Cooper is absolutely hilarious from beginning to end. Like
Tibetan method, the donuts and the coffee. It's so funny.
yeah,
All the cops, they have just like
exactly.
pile of donuts and coffee with them anytime they're in a meeting. It's hysterical.
And how many blooming just constantly reference moments like the influence this had on pop culture and influence it had on entire studios, entire game studios, filmmakers. Like Jesus, it's can't be understated.
Despite initially lasting 2 seasons for 25 years, this is one of, I think, if you were making a top 10 most influential television shows of all time, this would be on that list. Probably nearer the 10, but still, like, it's,
Yeah.
this changed American television. Um, and I have seen people make the argument, I don't agree with it, that this was the first show of the golden age of TV. I don't agree with that at all. I think that starts with Oz, but this is like proto golden age of television content.
Yeah, absolutely. And its influence is still now, like today. Like we have Alan Wake 2 coming out the
Yeah.
when we're about to release, and like that is so Twin Peaks, it's unbelievable. Like
Oh,
it,
the
it
influence it had on games might even be more than the influence it had on television. Like the whole aesthetic of game hub worlds is basically Twin Peaks. I'm not just talking like Deadly Premonition here. Um, there's a really great video on YouTube called like 25 games influenced by
yeah,
Twin Peaks, and it's not like speculative. It's like proven, stuff that's basically been
absolutely
admitted. Like
proven.
old
Yeah, yeah.
Zelda games, the hub worlds were just inspired by Twin Peaks and the characters. Like we're talking that level, like games that went on to shape the entire medium were based on the world of Twin Peaks to some
Yeah.
extent.
And then you've got full studios like Remedy putting out Alan Wake 1 and 2, Control, Quantum Break, all of those completely inspired by just the vibe and feel that that show brings. Like it's so plain to see. Like
The like it's there's so many shenanigans in the show. There's so much fun stuff that happens, but then the mystery of who killed Lorma Palmer like gripped America, and
oh
it's
yeah,
so gripping.
is that's the thing. Like I said when I was introing it, like the full on crime drama, like mystery that is in this took over America so much. Like people were talking about it at work and constantly about who killed Laura Palmer and what it was, and I don't think a single person guessed.
Well, that was what it was known as. Like this, I believe the kind of saying in the industry of like the water cooler moment.
Yeah, yeah,
This show, I am pretty sure, invented that saying because people would go to work and be like, "Did you watch Twin Peaks last night?" And they would discuss theories about Twin Peaks, and that pushed the show to sort of astronomical ratings. The season 1 finale did insanely well, and the season 1 finale is very funny because they put every single cliffhanger they can think of in it to try and get their
yes, they
second
do.
season, which they did.
Yeah, and the second season is not as loved, and
Parts
there's
of it, the first half of the, or not even half, the start of the second season to the end of the Laura Palmer arc, in terms of the original run of Twin Peaks, is Twin Peaks at its best, in my opinion. I think they come
yes,
back and they decide to really flesh out a lot of the characters. Like Bobby in season 1 is more of a villain character, and
oh
what
yeah,
in the
full
first
on
episode of
pretty
season
evil in the
2,
first season.
the first season episode of season 2, they really in very quickly, they really bring so much depth to him. And he's got my favorite arc in Twin Peaks, I think.
Yeah.
And when he came back to season 3, what they did with his character was perfect.
Oh yeah, yeah. Season 3. Oh my god.
We're gonna
Unbelievable.
get to that at the end, I think.
Yeah, I know.
Talking about studio interference with Lynch, this
Yeah.
was a victim of being too ahead of its time, because I need not tell people that in 1990, catch-up television did not exist.
It was not real, yes.
Yeah, this show demanded more from the audience than probably any other American television show before it ever did. So even if you watched every episode, people were struggling, and then if you missed an episode, you were fucked.
Yeah, you were absolutely screwed. Like you had nowhere to go back. You just had to hear about it. Like so,
Yeah,
people tuned in every single night to watch it.
the thing is, the drop off for the ratings was really high because
Yeah,
people every time you missed an episode, it just didn't get you back ever because it wasn't episodic. You couldn't just not be in for an episode. Um, and also people as the Laura Palmer arc dragged on because remember people weren't used to this. Like the pilot for Twin Peaks has a fucking 5 minutes on the end where they find Bob, who's a person in this, um, and shoot him and go, well, we solved that one. And it's like awful. And it's like, it was in there under protest. People were starting to think the show was nihilistic, which it's not. But I can understand why, you know, it's not blow up. It's not the audience for blow up. It's people didn't want this to drag on forever, even though Lynch did. So Lynch is interfered with and told, you have to reveal who killed Laura Palmer. And I am
yeah,
fully with the network on this one.
yeah. As am I. I think he he dragged it for way too long. Like,
I didn't even know about dragged it for way too long. I think the reveal is fantastic. I mean, that's the highest rated episode of Twin Peaks on IMDb is
the
the last
reveal.
episode.
Yeah,
And they marketed it to no end. Like the newspaper ad said, tune in this time to find out who killed Laura Palmer. And it's an incredible reveal. But then Lynch is like, well, I'm done.
yeah.
I
That's
don't
it.
care about this show anymore. In fact, he did leave a bit before then, after directing the first two episodes of season two.
It
And
did. Yeah.
then the show is aimless. It's not quite as aimless. Like, people do not like the comedy because like it's now an aimless weird comedy about the quirky people and the character, and it's got like some of the worst story arcs in television history. And again, I'm
Yeah.
not being hyperbolic, I really mean this. Nadine getting super strength, what fucking James fixing the fucking car is the worst thing I've ever sat
Uh,
through on television.
it's so weird that this unbelievable show has some of the just most dumbfounding moments in it in season two.
But Lynch comes back to direct the season finale, which
Yeah,
is insane. I mean, you want to talk about influence of the show, the Red Room.
the
I mean,
fucking red
everyone knows
room.
this image.
Yeah.
And the Red Room sequence or the Black Lodge sequence in the final is terrifying.
Oh yeah, absolutely horrifying. Like Twin Peaks has some of the best horror I've ever seen in it. Like it
Oh,
is, it's terrifying.
and people got it. People like this is really surreal horror. The backwards talking people in the room. Laura Palmer, her screams. I mean,
Ugh, what a
fuck.
good screamer. That
What a good. No, it's incredible. Cheryl Lee is a fantastic actor, and we're gonna get to Fire Walk with Me after Wild at
Yeah,
Heart. Like,
yeah.
one of the greatest performances of all time. I'm actually going to stop qualifying everything by saying I'm not being hyperbolic.
The
Just
best of
remember
all time.
throughout this, again, another best of all time. But I think, I don't know if this is controversial. Actually, I think it is controversial because people have very strong opinions on Twin Peaks. That once it gets to the Wyndham Earl story arc in like the last 6 odd episodes,
Yeah,
it gets really good again. I mean, Twin Peaks: The Return, I think, offhandedly mentioned Wyndham Earl once, and that was that. But like, Wyndham Earl is a very formidable villain.
yeah, very much. It actually gets decent, yeah, towards that end bit. But
Um,
it's just who made it there to even see it when it was first showing. Like,
it's true. I mean, this went from the biggest show ever to cancelled after 2 seasons, and
yeah,
famously, famously, it ended with a monumental cliffhanger and the sentence "See you again in
see
25
you
years'
again in
time."
25 years' time, and one of an unbelievably good cliffhanger.
I finished Twin Peaks season 2 a couple of weeks after it was revealed season 3 happened. So I would have lost my fucking mind if I didn't know that 25 years later things would be revealed. It's happening again.
That's so funny because obviously I'd seen it way before, like a
Oh
long
my god.
time, and I was just like, oh, cool. I'm never gonna know what was supposed to happen there. Like,
I like it's hard because I don't want to spoil specific arcs because obviously we've never talked about a television show before because there's like things that happen. Like there were some changes Carl McLaughlin made because he didn't think Cooper would do a certain thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is when Annie comes in as a character, and I like Annie as a love interest, but like I'm not a. I think the original idea of who he was gonna get with was better, but Carl McLaughlin didn't think Coop would do that. But like I think Twin Peaks at its best, which is like episode 1 to end of Laura Thomas story arc, season 2 finale, and season 3, unmatched.
Yeah, completely. Completely unmatched.
But you have to get through the in between Laura Palmer arc to Wyndham Earl arc. Like that
Yeah,
is,
you have to get.
I mean, painfully bad. It's not like, oh, it's just not as good as the previous ones. It really is painfully bad, and everyone's aware of it.
Yeah, you could tell Lynch is not there. Like it's not his his thing at that point. Like,
Before we get on to what Lynch was doing while Twin Peaks was going to shit, this is the greatest television score ever. This and Cowboy Bebop.
oh
I couldn't really
yes,
pick
yeah,
between the two, but the Twin Peaks theme, every human being knows it.
yeah. Even if you think you don't know it, you'll hear it and be like, "Oh yeah, I know that." Like,
Bung, bung, bung. Bung, bung. Just that, like, dark jazz. There's a bit in the pilot where Audrey is dancing in the
oh
diner. It's
yes,
like,
yeah,
isn't this music too dreamy? Dung, dung. Like, the Laura Palmer theme, it's beautiful. And there's footage online from a BBC4 documentary about film score of Angelo Badalamenti talking about how he wrote the score and what Lynch was telling him while he was playing, and it's a must watch. Even if you've not seen Twin Peaks, because I guarantee you, like Dom said, you know the score even if you think you don't. You
absolutely,
have to
yeah.
watch it for like a peek into creative genius.
What an unbelievable TV show, Stan. What?
Dare I say, one of the best of all time, Dom.
Oh, we'll never say that again.
Never, not in this entire episode. Thank you for listening to part 1 of the David Lynch special for the Extreme Cinema podcast. Stay tuned for part 2 next week, where we'll discuss Lynch's films from Wild at Heart to Twin Peaks: The Return. You've been listening to the Extreme Cinema podcast with Alexander Sternberg and Dom Loach. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider subscribing as it really helps us out. The original artwork for the podcast was done by George Arnold. The Extreme Cinema podcast, available where all good podcasts are available.